thanks, Led, and I want to thank the Coastal Federation for inviting me up here to Coastal, North Carolina. It's always such a treat for me to come over here. I was here a couple years ago for the Day of the Dogs in Harris, and I was here in the mid-90s. The North Carolina Fisheries Association brought me up here and trotted me all over the coast to meet their fishermen. And we kept running into these old boys. They usually had some khakis on and almost always navy blue suspenders, if I recall. And they didn't call the tide high. They said the toid was hoy. Ahoy toid! That was kind of neat. It's kind of like home where I live down in the Cajun country, South Louisiana. Down there, you won't hear a Cajun say through thick and thin, because there's no TH sound in French. They say tick and tin, Thunder Bay. And when you go to the grocery store, a lot of times you still hear people speaking French, the older people. And so if you think about it, well, how do you keep like a brogue dialect going since the 1600s or before that, or a foreign language in America? Well, probably have to be in an isolated location. Okay, isolated, check. We got that, I'd say, in those states. Thinking back a couple hundred years particularly. And you got to be able to make money. You got to be able to have an income. And in that case, it was basically commercial fishing. And when you have commercial fishing as a dominant economy for a couple of centuries, and in your case, you're talking 1800s, 1900s, you sort of develop a character. And if you had to characterize a fishing economy's character, it would be risk and resourcefulness. Risk, basically, let's face it, every time a fisherman leaves a dock, it's a risk. He's got no money, he's in the hole, it's a risk. Resourcefulness, we used to have an oysterman down there that would call commercial fishermen MacGyvers because, well, fishing economy a couple hundred years ago, you couldn't run to a Home Depot if you needed something. You had to make it with what you had. In an extreme case, you're out in your boat, you're broke down, you're sinking, you got to make do with what's on that boat. So it sort of shapes your character, risk, and resourcefulness, and that actually had a lot to do with the development of the offshore oil industry in Louisiana, which I have learned studying up for this presentation, really had a lot to do with the development of the offshore industry worldwide. And I'm talking really about people in my own little community of about 3,000 people. In part of my research, and this is a reference, for those of you who think the federal government can't really get anything right, this will kind of rock your world. The Mineral Management Service contracted with at least one anthropologist from Arizona and interviewed fishermen and people in the oil industry, in the developing oil industry in Louisiana. And as you can see, this is volume 5, the guide to the interviews, so there's lots of reading. This is a little saucier reading. This is specific to my little town of Golden Meadow. The rise of the Cajun mariners, the race for big oil. Our situation is far different than your situation. Our situation in Louisiana was from the get-go. Oil from the get-go, inshore. They had no infrastructure and needed boats in particular. And when I talk about boats, these guys, this is a few fellows from my town that got into the boat business. And the boat business in oil, tugboats, inshore tugboats to move those barges with the drilling mud and whatnot, water, offshore tugboats, big time stuff. You got to move rigs and you got to move the anchors that hold the rigs, 30,000-pound anchors. You need crew boats. You got to run guys out and back. And the faster the better, same with the supply boat. So it's mostly cabin forward, big back deck to lay pipe. They get up and go. If they don't, the oil companies hire somebody else. Okay, that's my backup. In case you're not satisfied, go to that literature. This is Louisiana, for those of you who don't know. There on the left is the 800-pound gorilla, Texas. Incidentally, the second most populated state in America. There's Florida, the third most populated. In the middle, we have little Louisiana, and kind of like butterfly wings, Mississippi and Alabama. We in the center, less populated, known by fishery biologists as the fertile fisheries crescent, because we have about 3.5 million acres of coastal marsh, and we have the Mississippi River bringing nutrients into the system. Right here, this line, this latitude line right here is kind of pretty much where I-10 crosses the state. And Interstate 10 is kind of the dividing line between North and South Louisiana. If any state could be divided into two different states, it's Louisiana, culturally very different. Cajuns got thrown out of Nova Scotia or Acadia in about the 1750s. Took them a while, by the 1800s, they were down there in the middle of the marsh. What do? They fished, they trapped, they hunted, they pretty much ate what they caught and hung on until they could develop an economy. After all that time, this is a typical Louisiana bayou scene. This is what it looks like. Not too bad after a couple hundred years of work. We hear a lot about sustainability. I kind of looked up in Lester Brown's World Watch Institute report, State of the World. He defined a sustainable society, or in our case we could apply it to a sustainable coastal economy, as, quote, one that satisfies its needs without jeopardizing the prospects of future generations. Inherent in this definition is the responsibility of each generation to ensure that the next one inherits an undiminished natural and economic endowment. Here's part of our sustainable coastal economy. This is a picture from a Cajun from the 1920s. When I moved down to Bayou in 1980, I had a barber, Marco Sheremy. He was himself in his 80s. Told me that he trapped 8,000 muskrats one winter and came back and bought all the wood he needed for his house. And that was it. Paid for it, cash. Into the 40s and 50s, Cajun families would move out into the marsh, live like the old days, cisterns, wood-burning stoves, the wives and the kids would skin, and men would trap. If you ever been to the Quarter on Royal Street, the Montleone Hotel, and the fur buyers from New York used to fill up a whole floor of that every year. Seafood is really the number one. This is an interesting slide. I couldn't resist showing this. Obviously, subsistence first. They sailed seafood, oysters in the winter and such, to New Orleans. And this is an early export economy right here. This is called Manila Village. They had a Chinese fellow, Li Yin is his name. I probably butchered his name. He introduced the shrimp drying process in 1873, and by 1892, the Chinese had built 6 drying platforms in Barataria Bay, which they manned with Filipinos. So you have to understand, okay, this is a totally insular, xenophobic community, and all of a sudden they're going to bring a bunch of Filipino people into it. Back in the 19th century, how do you do that? They built the whole community on stilts out in the middle of the lake. And they dried shrimp. Let's see, the harvest in 1880, 434,000 pounds, statewide harvest of shrimp in Louisiana. 10 years later, in 1890, 7.2 million pounds. Thanks to the early export market. The Chinese were exporting it to the Philippines, China, and Hawaii, right from down the bayou. In 1994, nearly 13,000 commercial shrimpers hauled in more than 87 million pounds of shrimp. Now somebody in the audience is thinking, yeah, that's great, but those are definitely not shrimp. Those, in fact, are spotted sea trout. The pictures from the 1920s, the Manila village is gone. An anthropologist was digging in the Pacific Northwest, and I guess it was a junk pile, some sort of midden, and he encountered all these spotted sea trout bones, decided southern fish. They traced it to this facility. The Chinese owner had contracted with the people that were building the railroads, who were using coolies for work, and that's what they were feeding them, those spotted sea trout right there. This is, you can see New Orleans is up there on Lake Pontchartrain. You head west, and Lafourche Parish is where I live. Bayou Lafourche is like the east, the western boundary of Lafourche Parish. Lafourche in French means fork, because Bayou Lafourche forks off the Mississippi River and goes down. There's Golden Meadow and Leeville right below it, about 8 miles. The two towns together, they're lumped together by NIMS as a fishing port. Golden Meadow used to be a big fishing port, a lot of canning going on there, and Leeville took over. And let's see, in 1994 and 95, they ranked 16th and 17th in the nation with $30.1, $30.3 million worth of seafood. Just moved along, just to give you a sense of our tradition. This was taken in 1946. This is my little town of Golden Meadow, Bayou Lafourche heading south. This is a blessing in the fleet. Shrimp shed owner hired an airplane, flew over. He was feeling good. His son came back right after the war. And if you notice, behind every house is a cypress cistern. That's where the water used to come from. I'm sure you probably had that same situation out here. Church, Catholic church, and there's the boats. Show you how intrinsic the fishing was to the culture. This is New Orleans. Speckled trout, wild caught speckled trout, wild caught drum, mullet, shrimp, croaker, redfish, extended right into the New Orleans retail markets, restaurants. This is a neat shot. This is in Houma. This is a town to the west of me, the next parish over it. If you don't know, we in Louisiana do everything different. We don't have counties, we have parishes instead. And that's Terrebonne Parish. And 6 bayous converged on that town, so they made it the, what do you call it? Just this parish seat, I'm sorry, the parish seat had a, well, I just had another, who was the governor in Texas? I couldn't remember. Rick Perry moment twice. Pardon me. Everybody traveled by boat, and this was Houma in 1934, but it was declared the parish seat in 1834. This is a centennial of that declaration. This is 1934. This shows the importance of fishing to the local community. I love those outfits. They're kind of risque for 1934, I think. Probably daughters of fish house owners and fishermen. Look like they're having fun. Unlike this gal. Here it is. This is the beginning. 1934. Well, I suspect they found oil in 1920, but by 34 she was starting off. And I guess I could make something. We could make something out of the fact that her dress is black, but And she doesn't look real happy, but if her daddy was in the oil business in 1934, she probably died filthy rich, so I don't think it's a big deal for her. This is my friend here, Kerry LeBeau, that's a Cajun. He calls himself a fifth-generation fisherman. Kerry talks about the cultural shift that occurred with the oil industry in Louisiana. He talked about how in the old days, fishermen didn't have their own trawl boats. They had worked on sailing crews, and the crews were run by canneries. And Kerry says, if you don't mind me reading to you in his words, he said there was very little cash back then, and not that many people had their own boats. That was up to and during the war. Then, toward the end of the war, and after that, Texaco came down here, and it gave these people a chance to earn money. Before that, they'd go shrimping, and they'd get food vouchers at the store for their shrimp. They were really just trading one kind of food for another. Texaco came down here, it gave these people a chance to earn money. So a lot of these people raising families, they got off the fishing boats and went into the oil industry. That's what Donna's family did. Donna's his wife. Just about all Donna's families related to the oil field. Her daddy, his brothers, and all. See, that's a Texaco generation. When Texaco first came and started drilling down here, that's what took that generation. That's how they became the oil field generation instead of the commercial fishing generation. Here we are back in Leeville. I think I skipped over a Leeville picture. I had some shrimp boats and we were looking up the bayou. This is pretty much the same location. We're looking up the bayou. The Gulf is to our back, as it were. I started to count those. There's more than 40 of them in that one frame. When I moved down to Bayou in 1980, one of those had dropped, well, they were all gone by then. But in the past, one had dropped out of sight, and it made a great place to fish. It was known as the blowout hole. There was a hole in the marsh with no bottom. And the water would get, when it would get cold in the wintertime, the fish would travel all around to get in that deep hole. And you often forget about the fact that rigs don't just drill, they all have to be connected. You gotta have pipelines. And in that case, in the 40s, they just laid pipe over the marsh and boardwalks. I myself ran over a boardwalk one time. My boat got hung up on that with an inboard. That was no fun, getting off of that thing. This is low-hanging fruit. You can see, you can pull a boat right up to the edge and do your drilling. Or the marsh was still kind of high there, that did corduroy roads. But soon, they had to get further out. Now this is a picture of marsh. This is pretty much natural looking marsh. You see everything flows, except right here. Uh-oh, straight line. That tells you man-made. And that's what you had to do if you want to get a drilling rig out in the marsh. Dredge. It's what they call a dead-end canal. There's a drilling rig. Now, an interesting thing people never think of. When you dig that, you pile mud alongside. Dredge spoil. Most of us probably think of tidal flow. When we think of tidal flow, we see the water going over and back and forth. There's also a tidal flow under the ground. It carries metabolites away from the roots of the grass. It carries nutrients to the roots of the grass. And when they pile mud alongside a canal, it interrupts that flow. And it kills areas of the marsh. This is an area that was worked over pretty extensively. Here you can see an area that's breaking up. This is dying. What they didn't dig up directly, they killed indirectly in this area. This is now a lake. And it's, as you know, wetlands are productive. Lakes, not so much. Another example, same thing. This, of course, you know, probably before the EPA you know, state with not a diversified economy. Not a lot of ejections in those days, but still not, as a matter of fact. So now what we know about potted spoil along the banks, we would expect this little area right here, it's completely enclosed with canals, to be open water. And we have a few other dead-end canals. Now, this is about 10 years later. This is right behind my house. This is a levee right here. I live right in here. This is Catfish Lake. So you can see we get kind of nervous about that because the marshland, 5 minutes, okay, sorry. The marshland creates a drag on tidal surge, the grass, the trees. So if it reverts to open water, which it all has by now, the tidal surges are more dangerous. Here, talking about pipeline canals, there's a double pipeline right there. This is something that's obsolete, sort of. These are tracks made by marsh buggies for seismograph. If you want a seismograph in a marsh, you've got to make a straight line. Here's some marsh buggy tracks. Marsh buggy's kind of like it's got like a sealed pontoon. It floats, so it can cross open water, and it's got like little flaps on the caterpillar treads. We can cross open water and cross marsh. That's what it does to marsh. That's obsolete. Now they use airboats. This is another old boat. The first one. This was made in 1854. It was the first one converted to motor. And the descendant of the family pioneered the offshore industry in the North Sea, multi-terrio tugboats. This is a picture of we're getting into the offshore stuff just because we're in a hurry. These are not rigs. These are basically oil fields. This is a river. This is probably a Deepwater Horizon out around in here somewhere, 10,000 feet. We have 4,000 rigs right now in Louisiana, off Louisiana. You need a port. You're talking about a port. This is Port Couchon. This was originally conceptualized as a banana port. They were going to run a railroad and make it a banana port. It never happened. And when the offshore industry took off, this is Port Couchon. These vessels, these buildings are made by a family down there, the Schwetz. They're big enough that they can tank up and load up their vessels out of the weather. This is just to give you an idea of the scale of things. This is a jack-up barge. The marsh buggy was invented by a guy down the bayou. These things were invented by a guy down the Mississippi River. They look kind of ridiculous, but you drive around and you drop the spuds and jack the boat up, and you got a stable platform. But they work over rigs, so they get clogged up. It's just there's some pretty stuff. Crew boats, supply boats. Maybe I should take questions unless we only have about 30 seconds left. 1 minute. This is a public dock. They do have trawl boats in Port Couchon. A lot of guys drive down and drag on the beach for a day. If it's good, they keep dragging. If it doesn't look good, they go home and go back the next day. Infrastructure. Kind of interesting. This is the old LA1. You see here's a lift bridge. You probably have these. Lift bridge was intolerable with the oil industry. Down here is Port Couchon. They come up here and they got to stop for a lift bridge. You got to understand, oil rigs, they'll lease these rigs, they'll charge $1 million a day to lease a rig. They don't shut a rig down to go find a crescent wrench. Everything is hush, is go, go, go. So they build a new road, elevated highway, and that's gonna come up and go through my town. I'm up there about 8 miles. And that bridge is gone, they decommissioned that. And you'll have pipelines, highways. This is from the spill. You see kind of mandatory pictures. This is a stone jetties to protect the beach in the background. And that's not a city, that's oil rigs out there. When I showed that picture of the oil fields, you know, that's not oil rigs. That each field has many rigs in it. It's just kind of like somebody who wasn't too happy. It was pretty demoralizing when the rig, when the spill happened. This was, what do you say, in memory of all that is lost, courtesy of BP and our federal government. You gotta know that all this stuff is lost. And that's what they thought at the time. Here's an oysterman, Woodward Collins. He's in my little town of Golden Meadow. What happened was, it was interesting, the worst damage from the oil spill in the inside waters. We have these freshwater diversion projects in the levees of Mississippi to try and restore the wetlands that are eroding. So to keep the oil out, the governor said, man, look, I mean, generally they would open those gates kind of like in accordance with the season. Open them up in the spring when there's floods. And well, when to keep the oil out, said, man, open everything full blast. And it did keep the oil out, but the fresh water killed just about every oyster in the state of Louisiana. So this fellow wasn't too happy, but I should say that the oysters came back. This is another cultural shift. Keeping in mind that we're something like 100 years ahead of you. You want me to shut up? Let's take a couple. Let's go to the, here's the slaughter in the water. Is what we don't do, but some people made it look like we did it. This is actually an oil company helping put us out of business. Keep in mind, 100 years ahead of you. Marsh buggy, actually doing restoration work. We try to put a tax on ourselves to get more of this activity going on. That stuff's irrelevant. Any questions?